Yeah, I heard the same thing. Better. He's had a training, a few sessions, so he's doing better. But it ebbs and flows like a kid. You know, one day. But all in all, he's big dog. He's just too smart for no good. I get hey, Carol? Yes. This is done. This, you had, so Dawn's the one after. Yeah, yeah. That's all right. I switched it. There we go. Other than the usual.
Well, as long as he records on that. I know.
We are falling apart here.
Pardon me? I think she's just.
Yeah. He's early.
Bring it on. Make sure.
Yeah, so is this all set up?
Yes. Yep, we're all set up, Rod's, yeah, he's all set up and he's gonna record.
In the fall. we're doing
Yeah.
it. How do we go?
All right.
Just a reminder, everyone, to sign in on the sign-in sheet. I don't remember, so they give me a note.
Sit down.
Yeah. All right, let's call this to order at 7:00 something. We always start out with pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call of members. We have 5 of the 7 of us here. Dawn is out with notice. And Tom Barris is out with notice. So the rest of the folks are here. Last time we met, we needed to elect a recording secretary, as Dawn is not able to do it this year. So everyone was supposed to go back and think about that and volunteer for that job. Now, I think you got a note from our township supervisor. Essentially, Dawn did an amazing job, but she also did a lot of things that we don't necessarily have to do in that. So I again encourage someone to volunteer at some point. We can't move forward too far without one. It's in our bylaws, so we're gonna need one. We can hold it to the end of the meeting, but at the end of the meeting, I would like to do that. We do not. So I will move that to the bottom of the meeting. In the meantime, Mike's gonna take notes. And we are recording the session on Zoom, so that will help too. The agenda before us is the one that was emailed. Pretty straightforward. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda? Moved by Steve, second by Leah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Agenda is adopted. The minutes from the January 27th meeting, which was minutes by committee, which I think went fairly well. Any changes, discussions on those? Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes? Moved by Leah, second by Sandy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, minutes are adopted. All right, I also want to acknowledge the March 3rd meeting, so everybody knows what happened. That was going to be a special meeting to take up one of these items, but unfortunately, sickness struck. So we had Tom out, he was in the hospital. We had Dawn out with a bereavement issue, and we have Leah was out of state, which we already knew about, and Mike got pulled out to go out of state for work, correct? So a few hours into it, I was told, you don't have a quorum, so couldn't really do much. So we didn't have the meeting, and unfortunate that that happened, but here we are at our regular March meeting. And we get some things done. So the next section is public comment. That's usually public comment. We are having a public hearing on what I suppose most of you are here for, which is the Pierce Road issue. So that comment will come a little later. So this would be public comment on anything else regarding township, anything going on that you want to ask about or state. Usually don't have a lot. Sandy, you
For
have-
those of you who weren't here, I'm wearing sunglasses because I had cataract surgery last week. And so these lights are just unbearable because my pupils are still pretty big. So I'm not trying to be cool, I just.
not true, Sandy. You always do that. So look, it's good.
Just wanted you to know.
We're all good with that. Okay, no public count. Yeah, Scott.
Just quick, I think I can hear you.
Yeah, I'll use
I
this.
think that the microphone can put.
Yep.
Forth.
Thanks.
Facilitate all of us.
Yep. I turned them on, so we should be good. All right. All right. One more, I'm sorry, I missed that.
I would like to make a comment about the open space ordinance. I don't know if this is the time or.
This is the time.
Okay. I believe Rebecca is joining us today. I would like to thank her for the excellent presentation that she put together and gave first to the Township Board of Trustees, and then even a better one to the Planning Commission, as I recall, an expanded one. I would like to see that presentation be made available to all the residents. Maybe it's on the website. I didn't happen to see it. That's number one thing. And number two, as we move forward with this, which I think is a subject of the first item of new business, I would like to recommend that it's not necessary, may not be necessary to rewrite the entire draft Maybe it would be easier to, rather than start over, to just look at the items that were affected by her previous comments as an option. It might be more expeditious that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. You took the words right out of my mouth, so. I agree. But yeah, the presentation, did anyone get a copy of that? You're supposed to get a copy. You get a copy?
I made them available to
You made 'em.
everyone
Okay,
and
you
sent
made
them
'em.
out, and I put it up, it was supposed to go on the website. I don't know what.
All right, can you check into that?
Yep.
It was a
Do you-
great presentation.
Yeah, I thought I delivered one to all of you, but
You may have,
I'll make sure you get another one.
again, my brain is
Yep.
fried.
Yep.
Okay, any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. Unfinished business, so this is an item for Carol and Planning Commission zoning map ratification. We keep trying to schedule a hearing for that. But unfortunately, we get applications in and we have to take those up. So the zoning map issue is, just to remind everybody, it's those pieces of property that are under consent judgment that we've never labeled as such on our map. And then there's a few that we decided need to be changed based on what they really are and some things that were done, I don't know, wrong, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
So these are, but that hearing, that's a public hearing, right?
Yep, and I talked with Attorney Rob Thaw. He believes that we're gonna have a clear agenda for April 28th, enough that we can take that on. So he's planning for April 28th.
April 20th, yeah. Are we gonna have any missing people on April? No? All right, we're good. All right, we'll move to new business. Brief discussion with Ms. Harvey about the OSP ordinance, and members, you got her questionnaire in your packets, correct? Everybody see that? All right, is she on Zoom?
Yep, I think Rod, yep, there we go.
Yep, I'm here.
All right, can you turn it up just a little bit, Carol?
Wait,
Maybe on the
you're
speaker.
asking on,
I'll also try to talk loud.
It's on the little piece behind the speakers, Carol.
behind, it's on that little Logitech?
Yeah, the little green light.
Yep, I'm at it. All right, is that any better?
Right now.
Is that
Oh,
better?
okay. How's this?
Whoa. How about
Was that too loud?
let me turn it down just a hair here. Sorry. All right. All right.
I would not have yelled. I'm sorry.
I think we're good.
You're all good.
So let me just briefly say that what our goal here, only for 30 minutes if we need it, no more. If we answer them all in less than that, then I'm on my way. So I know you have a full agenda. But I actually am on the cusp of drafting this for you. And I'm really ready to go. And we just thought maybe there was merit in one last appearance with the Planning Commission to do one of either of these things or both. Number one is if the Planning Commission had any other things they wanted to tell me that you have not told me yet, or that I haven't asked you, or it hasn't come up, I would like to know that so that I can make sure I'm responsive to it. But then I also thought that rather than just sitting here and asking you that question, because I think that's hard to do that just out of the blue, is I thought maybe if I actually posed some questions to you that I know I will need to know. I actually have opinions about how each of these will be done. But I thought, actually, I think I'd rather have it coming from you. And then when you see it that way, you'll know that this is being designed to do what you want to do. So I put together these questions, and if it's all right with you, we can just move right through those. And then if you have other things you want to say to me, that's great. How's that?
That sounds good.
Okay, so the first question is, as you know, right now in your current ordinance, you have the open space as a development option in 3 of your residential districts. And under the Zoning Enabling Act, you know, there's a certain criteria as to what makes it and what makes your district eligible to have this as an option. And you're actually required under the zoning act to provide it as an option in 5 of your districts. And I thought I wanted to make sure that there wasn't something I was missing as to why you don't have that in 2 of those districts. You know, maybe Attorney Thal has advised you otherwise, or there was some provision I'm not aware of. So my question is, do you happen to know the rationale for why it was limited to the Ag LR and SR1 and did not include the other 2 districts that qualify?
I saw this question and I thought about it. I do not remember. Carol, do you remember anything?
No, it's pretty old, so I think it goes back to the previous.
Yeah.
adminis-
Okay.
Yeah, so no reason we shouldn't, and I think we should.
Yeah, I'll proceed accordingly. I just didn't want to do it and then have you guys say, oh, no, here's why we did it this way. It's like, okay, that's great. Second question, as you know, a community has the option of mandating the OSPD, i.e. you can only do a subdivision if you do it using the open space approach, or offering it as an option. I wanted to make sure I understood your position on that before I crafted this. Are you interested in maintaining it as an option or mandating it?
And I have one question. So what does mandate mean? Does that mean someone has to go through the design process, but we don't have to go that route, or we do have to go that route? So you have your standard, what you would do in the zoning district, and then you have the design process. Is it just mandating that design process happen?
Yeah. So if it were an option, then a person, because right now, a traditional subdivision can occur in any of your residential districts. If you, with the option of using an open space development design approach, if you were to mandate it, you would be essentially taking the position that you only want to see subdivisions if they are designed using the open space approach.
It's a great question.
So if you don't have, if that you would like to ponder more, that is not going to change the design of my text. I've written enough of these where I know how I like to put them together, and that's an easy thing to change if you want to think more about it.
Well, the only thing I remember is when Tom Barris was here, he said that he would rather be an option. Other than that, I don't remember a lot of discussion. Does anyone else?
Okay.
But we do need to make that decision, so.
I say optional. at this point.
Yeah, you had said that before.
Okay, sounds good.
I feel
Well,
like
at first I thought making it an option was a good idea. And then I looked at it again and thought, if you're wanting to preserve the look and feel of the land, then it needs to be mandated. People need to think about the property itself. So I changed my thought from optional to mandated. And I wasn't here for that earlier
Right.
discussion.
Yeah, no, I understand. Let us think through that a little more. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, third question. So right now, and I'm only saying right now, which I realize doesn't make a lot of sense because you're seeking to change your right now. So I realize you are not, entrenched in the right now. But just as a point of comparison, the OSPD option right now, you have as a permitted use, And then it appears to me that the review process is dictated not by virtue of it being a permitted use, but it is dictated by the way that the land division is going to occur. So if it's going to be a site condo, then the OSPD proposal goes through the site condo review. If it's going to be a plat, then the open space goes through the plat review. So I suggest, I'm going to, the draft you're going to see is going to have a little bit different approach to it, because the OSPD master plan is zoning, and it should be with the planning commission, whether they're platting it or doing it through the condominium act. So, so my question is the OSPD plan is going to come through the planning commission, and then you're going to do the OSPD plan review, and then you're also going to do at the same time the land division review. So if it's a plat, you're going to conduct a preliminary plat review. If it's a site condo, you're going to do the site condo review, but you're going to do them at the same time with the OSPD plan review. So my question is, would you like the OSPD to be a permitted use as it is now, which means the only thing that is required is site plan review, which means it can kind of move through the planning commission in a quicker time frame? Or would you like it to be a special land use, which requires a public hearing, as you know? And so that does add some time to it, but it is done with the public knowing about it and, you know, with their feedback. So, right, there's kind of value in both, different values in either. So I wondered if you had a preference as to permitted versus special land use.
But even when it's permitted, we still have a site plan hearing, right?
Yeah, you still have to have a public hearing
It's just taking out the extra step.
of the special use.
Special use, right?
Well, so do you, did I not see that? Do you actually require public hearings with your site plans?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay,
for preliminary and final.
okay.
So I want to preserve the public hearing, but my initial thought was permitted use, because special
Yeah.
use just adds a layer that doesn't need to be there.
I agree. If you require public hearings for site plans that are just permitted you by right, and you still require public hearings, then there's no reason to have it as a special use. So, okay, we'll leave that as permitted. Thank you. Okay, next question. You currently have a 5-acre project size minimum for an OSPD. And I didn't know if you feel a project size minimum is necessary. I think this is a more pivotal question than you think. I think planning commissions and zoning in general, we've gotten used to putting project size minimums on because we are fearful that we're going to get a project that in design tries to circumvent the purpose of the provision, right? And so you're afraid that unless they're on a bigger piece, they're going to try and do something and slip in as an open space project when it shouldn't be one. I would suggest that the open space design is simply a design process that gets you a better design. It doesn't offer a new use option. So whether you have an so my point being is they could go in on a 4-acre project, let's say, and say, we've got these 4 acres, we're going to plat it. And we would like to do an open space design, but you have a project size minimum, so we can't. That's what would happen, or whatever that number is, that's what would happen if you have a project size minimum. So my feeling is that project size minimums sort of defeat the purpose of trying to encourage the use of open space design. So my question to you is, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so this came up when we were drafting the other one. Now, I don't know where the 5 acres came from the previous draft, but why we had one in the other draft was that there was nervousness around the density bonus. But if we're not gonna have density bonuses, then I see no reason to have a project minimum, because you're dealing with the same number, you're just designing it different. I don't know how others feel. But yeah, I don't see a reason to have it.
Okay, okay. All righty. So the next question is whether or not, I know right now you limit the OSPD option to single-family residential development. I wondered what your thoughts were about having it as a design option available for two-family land use as well, where two-family development is already allowed.
Right, again, without a density bonus, you're not changing the density,
Right.
changing
Right.
how the site is designed to preserve the most open space. So again, I say we would do that, but how do others do it? I mean, the only difference in multifamily and singles is the type of unit you're building. And it's not, what we see here in this township is the connected units versus separate. But Carol, am I missing something on that? I mean, why would it be in the
No.
first?
I don't know why it was, I think somebody just plucked something and put it in there because we had to comply with the law.
When did we get rid of the density bonus? When was that?
Well, I haven't gotten rid of it, but at the last meeting, the consensus was, as she's rewriting this thing, she suggested, because that was the most controversial thing we had.
Right, right.
Was if we didn't have to use density bonuses, we could use these other things, which I think she's gonna get to in a minute here, which is the incentive being things like, maybe you allow private roads if you do this, or maybe you make the process easier. So we get away from the controversy about density.
Okay.
It seemed to make sense to everybody at the last meeting, 'cause that's
Well,
why I
it
just
makes
thought.
the OPS more common sense, and if they're not just trying to get a density bonus.
Right.
They're gonna try to preserve the open space and make the best use of the parcel.
We don't want higher density, we want better laid out.
Exactly. That's supposedly the mission. Yeah.
All right, so the answer is yes.
Okay, cool. And great segue into the last question. So I'm clear on your interest in not allowing a density bonus, but you do have interest in other things that will serve as incentives. So I think what I would like to do for you then, is, since I'm clear on that, is go ahead and finalize my draft for you so that you can see how that would look. And then if you look at it and say that you have, maybe you have a change of opinion on one of these incentives in terms of the review process or how that private road might look, we can change it, right? But at least you'll see how that could work.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Okay, so those were my key questions. Do you guys have other things you want to tell me before I put that together for you?
No, and something else just came to mind to reiterate that. We were in the room last time you presented. I know another township board member, Kurt, stood up and said that he really liked the conversation because it got him away from that density bonus controversy too. So just to reiterate.
Okay,
But yeah, I think these were my questions, the ones you posed here. I'm sure when we see the whole draft together, it'll bring up others, but
yeah, absolutely. So what's your desired, because I can work on your schedule. So what's your desired timeframe? Would you like the draft text available for your next meeting? Do you already know what your schedule looks like? And that's you tell me what works for your schedule.
yeah, tell me what my schedule is, Carol.
I honestly think it would be great to have this at the next meeting. So if Rebecca, if you could have a draft for the planning commission to review, it
Yeah.
won't be a public hearing, it will just be a review of the draft.
Right. So draft one, okay. And your next meeting is the 28th?
Yes,
Okay,
I have time in the draft, make changes, and then have public hearing to get further input.
so I'll go ahead and make sure that you have that. I think your packets go out a week before the meeting.
Yes,
Okay, so I'll make sure you have it by what, the 21st? And then I'll be prepared to join you on Zoom again to present it to you guys. Does that work?
Works for me.
All right. Okay. Well, this was helpful. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Rebecca, appreciate it.
Yep, and we'll see you on the 28th.
All right, sounds good.
thank you.
Yep, good night.
Get all that, Mike? You need to get all of it as part of it. All right, moving on to new business. We have a public hearing this evening on property on 32 acres, 480 Pierce Road. Seems like I've seen these numbers before. This is a conditional rezoning request from ag zoning to multifamily. Because it's conditional on a site plan is listed here. But tonight, I want to focus on the conditional rezoning and not the site plan. And the reason being that in consultation with staff and others that we don't have a lot of information. We need more information on preliminary site plan. We need more review. We need more engineering. We need more. And it doesn't make sense first if the conditional is not approved, then that goes away anyway. So why would we do that? So let's focus on A and then we go to B if we needed to.
Right.
Right.
The applicant is here if you want.
Yeah, it's your. Hey. Well, I can do it one of two ways. If you want to give a short synopsis of the project, and then I can open up to public input. And then usually what I do is come back to you for 5 minutes of, any response that you need. And then we close the hearing and it comes to this group. Okay, but before you begin, I do want to note that we did receive a huge number of, not a huge number, but a number of letters, which we all have. And they were, and I'm not kidding you, these were some of the best written letters that I've received in, I don't know how many years I've been doing this, in terms of actually looking at standards of review and things that I didn't even know what these were before I took this little voluntary gig. So thank you very much for that. A couple of concerns though that were raised I want to address before the public hearing so that we focus our comments on those great details that we need to focus on. There was some indication and confusion about process, and I want to clear that part up. And then maybe at the end, there'll be other things that jog my mind that will clear up. But I always like to start with process because people don't spend their lives in these meetings, and God bless you, because you shouldn't, right? So and one time I was on your side of the table and I had no idea what was going on. I said, if I ever got on that side of the table, I'm gonna explain it. So here I go. So this is a public hearing for an application for a zoning change. So this body is a voluntary body of folks who get asked to be on this commission by our elected board. And our job is essentially to go through reams of information, engineering reports, things like that, and try to have a public hearing and get input from all of you, and then make some sort of recommendation up to the board, and then makes a decision. The process usually goes, I think you heard a little bit of it tonight. This group finds some time in their busy lives to get here once a month. And usually at that meeting, we figure out what's coming. And so I think a month or two ago, we got told there's a proposal for this project. So we try to set a hearing date. I wanted to have it early in March. We had some problems getting quorum. So here we are tonight. And a week before the meeting, we get this big packet actually explaining what the project is. And our job is just to, like all of you, look at it and come up with, ideas on what we want to do going forward. That's really the process. So this planning commission is by no means a body that goes out and seeks any sort of proposal from anybody, because the best month we have is when we don't have to come in here. So we just take, when somebody applies, they essentially have to fill out an application. get a bunch of engineering done, which costs them money, they have to pay almost, I think it's like, it used to be 900, was like $1,000 now, and have a hearing.
It's still 900, the
Yeah, so
application fee.
they pay quite a bit of money to get us all in here and have engineers look at it and all that stuff. And then we get told we have to have a hearing, and by law, we have to have a hearing. I mean, you know, the project could be a satellite on the moon. We have to have a hearing, right? So we have a hearing, that's where we're at. So we look forward to that public input. We'll start out just, if you could just do 3 minutes, just overview the project.
Sure. You understand? Or?
Yeah, stand, and anybody that stands up to talk, just give your name. And, you know, if you're the applicant, if you're a resident, please tell us where you live. Yep.
My name's Danny. I own Maloney Builders. It's a family business since 1970. I do agree with you and the focusing on the zoning. I'll touch on the site plan, but mainly I agree that the zoning needs to be addressed before we even really delve into the site plan. Interesting that the lady before, I'm not sure who she is.
She's our consultant, the township board hired to help us with the.
Okay. She talked about open space, and on that piece, it's roughly 32 acres, and there's a little over 11 acres that isn't being used. The project that we're proposing or will propose is very similar to one we've done before. It's a neighborhood feel. I believe, this is just my opinion, based on the future land use, you guys as a community have an asset in an exit off of probably the busiest freeway in the country. I mean, I'm sorry, in the state with 94. And some of you might view it as a liability and some of you will view it as an asset. But the board, I think back in roughly 2000, they decided to run sewer and water up there, which some of you opposed and some of you maybe agreed with. And I think it's 4 or 5 of the current members were on the committee that changed that land use map to see the asset that it is, that it can help the community bring in additional tax revenue. It's a very isolated area in comparison to the community as a whole. And they did keep it to where the sewer and water runs. They didn't create this big urban sprawl area where it's going to take a lot of your large parcels away. It's really contained to that interchange of 94. And if you look at, you know, any of the communities either way, that's where most of the commercial and the action is off of the freeways because of the amount of traffic there. So the foresight I thought was good on your part in doing it. And then on top of it, with the mixed use category, it really is a broad range of what can and can't go there. On the residential side, you could do multifamily, but I didn't think that was the right thing. I thought the right thing was to bring a smaller community at 2.2 units to the acre. It sounds like a ton to you guys. I completely understand that because you're used to your larger parcels, your 10, 20, 30 acres, 100%. But in the development world, that isn't a lot. That's about a half acre lot, even though they're not half acres, but it comes out to about a half acre lot. The community, in case any of you are wondering what it looks like that we did do, it's in Canton. It's called Cherry Hill Village. It was started by another developer, and we finished phases 3 through 8. The first 2 phases were done right at 05 when the market crashed. Those builders went out and we took it over. We're currently building in the community right now at Chelsea Springs. We think this is a great area, and we're not a big, large Toll Brothers. We're just a small company. We build about 25, 30 homes a year. I'm on the job every day. My son's on the job every day. My hands look like a lot of farmers do. That's just what we do. We're very involved in our process. We're fortunate that we're not a company that needs to borrow money. We are a cash business, so you're not going to see us go broke. We thrived through 08, 9, and 10, where a lot of people went out of business. So on to the property side of it. We looked at the site plan. You know, we do have apartments in other communities. We didn't feel this is right for that. We really believe that this is a community that has the potential to have controlled growth along that corridor. And this would help. It would help bring in tax revenue, which would allow fire service, which would allow more money for police and the internet. You know, think about it. If you're Comcast and you have large parcels all around the community. They're not gonna want service there, but if you start to build along the corridor, those things will bring those businesses, or I should say those services to your area. So that's basically my thing. Yeah, I'm not the guy that sits behind the desk and counts money. That's not me. That's not me. So I do it just like everybody else. I hold my work boots on every day. So it's my son. And I just want you to know that that's what we are as a business. We're not, burning organization. You have any questions for me?
Thanks, Dan. All right, we will open the public hearing. Same rules, 3 minutes per person. Try to stick to that. I have a lot of leeway, but we got a lot of folks here tonight. So if you want to speak, and again, I have all the letters. There was 2 questions in 1 letter. And Amanda, if I get this wrong, you can help me. You sent them to me. I think it was someone that couldn't be here and asked 2 questions, or 1 question with 2 things. So it was, what happened to the solar farm and
Daycare.
daycare? Daycare, okay. By my confusion, you can tell, I don't know. I've been on the planning commission for 8 years, I don't know. I haven't had any applications for those things. Maybe they came before us, but I don't know. Like I said, if someone applies, they get a hearing, so I don't know.
That was actually my question.
Oh, you're
I
here.
was able to make it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it may just be in the rumor mill, but we have heard amongst us that
Yeah,
the solar panel farm was denied and the daycare was denied. And so I just thought maybe something to clear that up.
I mean, I'm not gonna be back and forth here.
Yeah, yeah, no, just some information.
Yeah, I could explain it a little bit. There was a presentation made around 2015 or 16 by Srinergy directly to the township board. Just kind of testing the waters for the solar farm thing, and they never went through the actual application. But it was in that area too.
That's the township board.
Yeah, I think they were politely informed that that wasn't something that's permitted, so they didn't go forward.
That's a good question for your township board members.
Right, and I don't know about the daycare, but there was a daycare proposed in another part of the township.
Yeah, that was over on McKinley, in the city.
Yeah, that's all I thought.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to get to that because I wasn't sure you were gonna be here. so.
So, Dave, I just want to let you know, Rob's available.
Rob's there. All right, thanks, Rob. Okay, first hand up, right here, again, your name, where you might live, and then,
Well, I'm attorney Alex Ruder. I had submitted that letter. for
Okay, yeah,
Myers.
yep.
I don't live in the township, but this is not my first time in front of this planning commission. I just want to thank you guys again for allowing me to come in, and I represent a couple of local landowners, May and Kevin Townsend. So I just want to touch on one thing briefly that the applicant has mentioned, and I think it's something that's important to know. Opposing the application doesn't mean that we're viewing it as, an evil person or anything like that. We understand that and get the business run, but this is a community that people live in and have to be here every single day and deal with the traffic and congestion. And the last thing that they want to see is an increase in those things, especially when there's a potential for, an impact to public safety and impact to, a deprivation of the resources of the community, things like that, although the builder might be a great guy, he doesn't have to live with every single day. So just wanted to make that note that opposition does not mean that we're accusing him of being a bad person. He's the greatest guy in the world. So like I mentioned, I had submitted a letter. I don't know if the commission had a chance to take a look at that. But I just want to touch on some of the highlights. I'll be quick.
Okay.
So the first one is this is a conditional rezoning request to the the MR district, which, and I'm just going to read really quickly a part of its description. I'm quoting now. It's designed to permit a density of population and intensity of land use in those areas which are served by a central water supply system, a central sanitary sewer system, and which abut or are adjacent to such other uses, buildings, structures, or amenities which support, complement, or serve such a density and intensity. And one of the things that I thought was kind of striking here is when you look at the actual land, there are no such abutting or adjacent land uses, structures, or buildings that's referenced in that MR description. One of the things that, as lawyers we do, we look at case law, and we try to determine, how are courts looking at this, if this was ever gonna, go up the ladder? And one of the things that Michigan courts have consistently done, time and time again, is take a look at the surrounding land uses, the specific land itself, and ask themselves whether or not it's compatible and consistent with the surrounding area. And I think if you do that here, the answer is clearly no. This is an agricultural and very, very low density residential area. I don't think that you're gonna find, and I know that some of the supporting documents touch on this better than I do, but you're not gonna find a lot of 71 unit parcels like this anywhere in the community. So I had mentioned a case, it's the Bell River case in that letter. I think this is important. In that case, the court specifically struck down a rezoning from agricultural to single family residential, high density residential use. And the reason why they did that was because of the burden that the rezoning would have placed on the community, on the police department, the fire department, emergency services. And, the agricultural community wasn't designed to accommodate, such an increased density of residential use, and I think that's exactly what we have here. There's a graph that was submitted that really shows, a good illustration of how much more dense we're looking at in terms of residential use. And I think anytime you do that, you're gonna have inherently an increase on the burden to police departments, to the firefighters, the community well and sanitary sewage and things like that. So I mentioned the consistency, look around the land use patterns in the area, it's completely inconsistent. I think the other thing that I want to just briefly touch on, I have no idea where I'm at with my 3 minutes, but the conditions that they had proposed were concerning, and it's not something that I've seen a lot of. And but by the way, I've also represented municipalities before, so I've seen this on both sides and developers as well. But this is something I haven't seen. The conditions that they are proposing, and I know we're only talking about the rezoning, but it's important to keep this in mind, are actually over and above what would be allowed in the multifamily residential district. And so they've gone from currently 150 feet for a lot width down to 45. That's a 70% decrease. The front yard setback down to 19 feet from 35. That's a 46% decrease. Side yard setback, they're requesting a 50% decrease, and a rear setback of 40% decrease. That's, like I said, I've never seen that before. That's a lot. We're talking about stacking homes on top of each other. And even with the minimum lot size of 1 acre on 32 acres, they're requesting 71 units. If you applied that, they would get 30 at most. That's not even considering the protected area. I think I'm probably out of time. I saw you look at the watch, so I'm gonna leave it to everybody else. I'm happy to take questions, and I think that the letter I did, I've done a lot of this homework.
Yeah, no, and these were detailed in this letter, and it's one of the reasons I made the comment before, but absolutely, if you got a couple more things you wanna get on.
You know what, I think that the people that are here to speak will probably do a better job of expressing how it feels to be in the community and to value the way this community is laid out, and the agricultural nature of it. And they do not want to see that change. That's why you have such a presence here today. So I just, if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think the letter really speaks for itself.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Next hand, did you want to go next?
Oh, I'll go next.
Well, I don't know, you were jumping up.
I was thinking.
Okay, what's your name and, where you
My name is Mandy. I live right on Garvey Road. So you made very good points. So I'm a mother of three small children, and one of my biggest concerns is safety. So the intersection of Old 12 and Pierce Road is one of the most dangerous intersections in our township. There's no surprise to any of you who live in this township. I actually looked up a map that shows all the crashes that are there, and this is what I found. Okay, so the intersection of Old 12 and Pierce Road is extremely dangerous. I've almost been hit there coming off the highway 3 times since December. So that is one big problem. With 71 homes, an average of 2 cars per household, you're looking at about 150 more cars going through there. The next concern with safety is coming off of both sides of Garvey Road. There's a blind spot. If you're trying to turn left towards Kavanaugh Lake Road, there is that huge hill that you can't see past. I call it the llama house. I'm sure you guys know what house I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
I had pleasure in meeting the new family that lives there, and she also told me how concerned she is because her son's almost 16 and is going to get his driver's license. So in order to accommodate that many homes, like that whole, it would have to be leveled out in some way to make it safer. Environmentally, like you said, homes stacked on top of homes, stacked on top of homes. I have lived in Chelsea my whole life. My whole families on two sides have lived here for generations and generations and generations. I don't want to leave. Every year there's cranes that come into the wetlands on our property and have these. And I enjoy seeing that every single year. My children enjoy seeing that. We enjoy seeing the deer. We enjoy seeing everything that has to do with living in a rural community. I'm going to touch real quick on safety as far as when you're looking at those higher density areas. So there is that subdivision going into town right before you hit the Chelsea Retirement Community Home. I have had really bad luck since the beginning of the school year, going in to pick up my daughter, going in to pick up my son from school, with children who live in that subdivision. They're riding hoverboards in the road. They're riding scooters in the road. And I actually, one day, one just like cut me off. And I drive the speed limit. And I almost called the police, but I was like, whatever. So that can only imagine would just be the same with that number of homes in our area. And I guess the last thing, because I'm sure a lot of you will touch on other things that I have to say, is, we live out here because we love the rural setting. I don't know how many of you know, but the area that is Spruce Run, when I was a child, somebody wanted to build a high density subdivision there. They were shut down by that current board because of the same thing you touched on, her, was that it doesn't work in our environment. I have 4 friends who work in Ann Arbor who have been begging for a home that has some acreage to it that they can afford, and they can either get an apartment or they can get a subdivision home. They don't want that. The thing is there's not enough homes that have some property to them, so you can have your own garden, you can have some pets, you can have some chickens, whatever you want. So, there's no offense to the applicant, but we live here because we don't like the atmosphere of Canton or Pittsfield Township. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Next up, and this is my timer. This is me looking at it. Okay, over to you.
Yeah, it's on the other side. There's some lady, which she's, I'm Terry Champagne, my wife Donna, we live on Spruce Run.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. This young lady lived here all her life. We've only lived here a year and a half. And one of the main things we looked at, looking at this community, was the master plan. And that master plan represents this as a welcoming committee. I don't say low density, but agricultural. I know that agricultural is going away over time, and I know that land is used for something. But we made a lot of our decisions based on that. In the year and a half we've been here, this is the second time around, somebody's trying to put something on that piece of land that doesn't fit the area. And I guess I also understand, I understand that it's now time for another master plan. It's time for that. I think if I'm correct, I think there's been a budget approved for doing that. And these kind of decisions, I think we need to look at what the community has to say before we start making changes in front of a brand new plan.
Yeah, hang on. I do want to, that was the other part of the process I forgot to talk about. So, just for history's sake, so we, in 2015, we had, we were approached by the supervisor at the time, maybe some other folks, to look at the master plan at that time that hadn't been done since 2008. I was brand new, I didn't know what a master plan was. And I think we started down the road of doing it. We realized it was like a year and a half, and we did it. We did a year and a half of, when you do a full master plan, it's a long process because the law has these different steps you take. You do have to hire a consultant because it's such a crazy process. We went through all that. We had hearing after hearing after hearing. I think what happened in that was that we didn't have a lot of people show up at those, and then we had one meeting where we tried to brainstorm how to get people to come. And we did a survey of everyone's tax bills. We did, I don't
We
know,
had stakeholder meetings, we
stakeholder
had
meetings. Yeah.
multiple meetings,
But
and actually our consultant thought we had a pretty good turnout.
Yeah, it was decent, but I think one of the problems we had was we didn't have any developments proposed. Because it was right after, the crash, and I think a few years later, so we didn't have, so what ends up happening is the development's proposed, and everyone pays attention, right? It's next door, but I totally understand that. So the master plan that we did was based on the fact, you have to answer the first question is, when you review the master plan, you have to say, do we need to do that whole process? Do we have to go through and redo the whole thing? And the way you make that decision is, has there been major changes since your last master plan? And in 2015, 2016, prior to that, that 2008 master plan was based on a bypass going through Chelsea, or going through Sylvan Township. So an M52 was going to bypass Chelsea. We all remember that. And so the master plan had that laid in there, and then it had land uses around it that it was going to be 52. So we said, yeah, that's a major thing. We have to redo this. The second major thing that happened was all the court mumbo jumbo that again was prior to my time, which was all the adjudications around the developments that were going to happen and didn't happen, and then we're still dealing with it. That's why we have to have a zoning meeting on consent judgment properties, because we have all these properties where the judge has decided what's going to happen, not us. So those two things we needed to redo it. So we did our best to do what we could do. And so that was May-ish, 2017, May something.
May 25th is when it was the statement of adoption.
Yeah, so again, this body does its work and then it goes to the board. The board adopted it in May.
It's May 2nd.
So this year there will be a review by this group to determine, does that need to be opened up again? So that's how the process will work. So I just wanted to lay that out so everyone understands the process, because quite frankly, I had to go ask and look it up. So it's not something you do every day, but the master plan is a very important document because it helps folks like yourself when you move into a community. It helps developers when they come into a community to decide what they're going to do. And we can get into the pieces of that later, but that's how we did it. And then a lot of those decisions were based on infrastructure. So water, sewer, and then the exchanges off the highway. So you'll see in the master plan, there's things around Cloverleaf by Chelsea, and then there's some industrial property off of this one. Anyway, that's the process. Next up. Who's back? You guys.
Yeah, so the master plan was.
First your name and
My name is Janet Cooper, and I live in Mile.
thanks, Janet.
So master plan, decide what acreage is suitable. It used to be you had to have 2 acres in order to build a home. I can appreciate that the landowners would like to sell that property, but maybe they should just look along the lines of putting maybe a dozen homes on. But if you said 20 acres. Well, 33, but he said that 11 of it wouldn't even be worked. Probably because it's a low-lying area next to West Street. I can appreciate the landowner wanting to sell property, but I don't really see why we should be concerned about builders property from our law. So
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick answer. The master plan does not determine, those are ordinances that determine for each zoning district, what minimum lot sizes are. So
You still are 2 acres.
that's for ag. For ag, they have 2 acres. When I was a kid, it was 10. And that's how we ended up with those bowling alleys. If you look at our plot map, you had to have 10 acres to keep it ag, and you had to have so much road frontage. So if you had a square, what did you do with it? You made bowling alleys. So that's, but yeah, anyway. Next up. Yep.
I'm Chris Minnick, and I own property just to the west of this proposed. And again, like some people that have been born and raised here, I've lived here since, either lived here or owned property here since 1963. Known Jim Comball my entire life. And, you know, I hear everybody's squabbling about, we don't want him to do, it's like nobody wants him to do anything with it. And I haven't heard one person step up to the plate and say, Mr. Comball, we're gonna buy your property from you. We're gonna offer you what you are asking for the property to preserve this. And it's just not happening. And I consider it a great insult as a property owner that everybody around me gets to dictate what I do or don't do with my property. And depending on the outcome of this, one day I may want to sell my property. I got 45 acres there. Am I even going to be able to sell it? Or am I going to be stuck paying taxes on it till they put me in the ground? Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We did get a few, we did get a few other letters to similar neighbors, making points like that too. So I didn't want to, I can't read through everybody's letters, but we received letters on all sides. Next up. Anybody else?
Well, I'll respond to that, if you don't mind, Mary.
Well, before we get, I don't want to get too back and forth. So you want to get her to go first? Okay.
I did inquire about buying the property, and I know a few people here did too. So we were always told it was
What's her name?
Yeah, she'd still go for it. What was your name? I'm sorry.
Mary Elordi.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that was the obvious thing to do. So I did make some inquiries, but it was always under contract.
In the back.
Hello, my name is Lou Galante. I've had property out there for 22 years and recently retired out there 2 years ago. I wrote a letter. I just like what read my letter. I'm opposed, first of all, I'm here to support the opposition to all the residents here that are opposing. I'm opposed to rezoning this parcel from agricultural to residential rezoning. This property does not fit in the Sylvan Township's master plan. Here are some of my reasons for my opposition I'm concerned with. My first point that I'd like to, I'm coming from a conservationist point of view. And it's the loss of the open land that protects the headwaters of the Huron River. That Letts Creek flows into the Mill Creek, which flows into the Huron River. And I don't know if you know about it, the trout live in those streams. And it takes pretty clean water to support trout and trout habitat. And if that land is, if we pollute that part of the land, or if the water warms up, that's going to affect the rest of the water all the way down to Dexter and Ann Arbor. The second, the increased traffic on Pierce Road, as the person pointed out, old US 12 and Pierce Road is a dangerous intersection, and especially when it gets icy, you get the Calmback ice, Calmback Road curve. And I'm concerned about increased taxes. This is what somebody already talked about. It will eventually follow for further infrastructure such as police, fire defense services that will be required as due to increased density. And then my next question is, will further continue to add more traffic and more environmental concerns concerning, will they want to build gas stations or strip malls? I'm against losing green space which I think is Sylvan Township's most distinguished valuable characteristic is this green space. And I don't want Sylvan Township to look like any of the built up townships that are in Washington, Oakland, and Wayne counties where they got traffic all day long. That's not why we came out here to live. Sylvan Township is a great rural atmosphere, and it would be greatly diminished if a densely populated subdivision was allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Gotta catch up on everything. Okay. All right, next up. Yes, sir.
Mark Warner, I live on Garvey Road, look right out at this land. I agree, Jimmy ought to be able to sell his land. 70 homes seems a little ridiculous. I bought an existing home almost 30 years ago on 18 acres so that I could live in the country. If I wanted to live in a subdivision, I'd move to Livonia. People brought up stuff about police protection and whatnot. I don't know if anybody else has ever seen the police call. We have no police here. You call the police, it's the state police. You tell me how long you think it takes them to get here. You look at any high density development anywhere around and see how much the police presence gets increased. I don't know how they're gonna handle that. And the traffic issues. Anyway, I'd love for Jimmy to be able to sell his land. I think Manchester Towing's building with a fence around it looks pretty good about now.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I'm sorry. In the back, yep.
I'm Kevin Townsend on Spruce Run Drive.
Hey,
I
Kevin.
don't agree with the towing statement, but directionally in the same direction. I like Mr. Kalmbach to be able to sell his land too. Mike and Mary said, one of the first conversations we had is, could we pool together and buy that so that the land is off his hands and we hold it until the master plan gets reviewed, which is by law, 2022. So it's confusing to me that we're even entertaining new proposals until we review that master plan. It's out of date. It's out of compliance. And if it takes a year to ramp up and blah, 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 then that should have been started, that process should have been started last year. I believe, as Jerry said, I believe I heard it's in the budget. If you look back at minutes from previous meetings, it's been mentioned. Yes, we acknowledge we have to review the master plan. So the board has known about this. The planning commission has known about this. That should be done right now. If we were even to look at that property development proposal, it's 30 times higher density than the surrounding area. It's 13 times higher density than the most highly dense area in this area, which is Spruce Run Drive, that neighborhood. So this is where I totally agree with the gentleman who said it's not the right development. You wouldn't even have to rezone that property to put a house on every 2 acres in there and have a nice 10 or 12 house community in there. And if everyone had been pulling in that direction 5 years ago, Mr. Kalmbach wouldn't be sitting here in front of it, or none of us would have to be here. We should be home watching the Michigan game right now. Watching them lose probably, I guess. But we wouldn't be here right now having to deal with this. This problem would have been resolved. We wouldn't have had this problem. We'd probably been on to a community that fits the area. And everyone would have been following the rules. I guess that's my main request here. You know, let's follow the rules, review the master plan, and then encourage, go out and work as hard as we've worked to get this 71 unit development in front of us. Let's work that hard, but let's do it to get a house for 2 acres or something more reasonable. Then we can debate that. We came to Chelsea in '88. Haven't been here as long as many, been here longer than some. We moved into Bridgetown condo, close, congregation of folks, close community. We loved it. We had, we moved out to Sylvan Township because we wanted more space. We had kids and said, maybe the kids want to move back into town. So we said, let's talk about that. No, kids wanted to stay out in the country. So we stayed out here. But we had the choice. You can move out in the country in Sylvan Township where you have some space. You're not on top of each other. Or you can move into town, or you can move into Dexter, you can move into Scioto Township, you can move into Ann Arbor if you want to be in that close kind of community. But why force both things in both areas? Let's preserve Sylvan Township the way it should be. Those are really my main things.
Thank you, Mr. Tom.
other comments? Patrick?
Yeah, happy to see everyone. I've been listening to all these comments and I guess I'd like to address my comment somewhat to both sides of it. It seems like a lot of people have kind of resigned themselves to the idea that there's going to be some kind of change of use of that property, probably some kind of development. But it's a question of what goes in there. And nobody really liked the Tony Impound Yard. I didn't either. I was shocked when I saw the density of this one. Oh. You know, I thought we would be better than the Tony Impound Yard, and that's debatable whether we did it or not. But what we really haven't seen recently, you know, other than the solar park thing a couple of years ago that was briefly presented, we haven't really seen a moderate proposal from anybody yet. It might be a little bit higher density than what they have right now under ag, because after all, it is master plan for multi-use, right? Maybe it's gonna go modestly higher. But I'm wondering if the builder would consider stepping down a little bit as far as density. And I'm also wondering if the opponents of this, I don't live near that near, although I drive up and down all the time, so I'll deal with the traffic too. That's true. But I wonder if the opponents of it would actually might consider accepting something that was more moderate. I don't know what the bottom line is for one of your builders economically, but you know, subdivisions can be built economically on lower density out there. That's probably true. I know there's no way to like make a deal here. There's no way to present a whole range of hypotheticals, right? But if people could get together and work something out, we, you know, might even find something that would use an open space ordinance too, and get some density but cluster. That might be a middle ground as well.
Thanks, Patrick. Okay, any more from the public? All right.
Hey, I'm Doug Haber, I live on Garvey Road. I've been in the construction industry for 45 years. 35 years of it, I've built these kind of projects. I've installed the water, the sewer, built the roads. And back when Sylvan put the sewer in and water in, I asked Mr. Dresselhaus if he was nuts, because he's shipping the sewer all the way up to Jackson County. And I told him, I said, you know what that's going to cost you in maintaining your lift stations and stuff? But here we are, we're all paying taxes on it, even if we're not hooked up. Now, I don't have a problem with Jim selling his property, if it's his property. But I know how projects this dense look like. If you want to see what these kind of setbacks are going to look like, go out on Pontiac Trail in North Van Arbor, because Pulte Brothers built one out there, and them houses are close. You look at that and you go, damn, I wouldn't want to live there. I mean, I know their business to make money, because I've worked with them. I worked with the city of Van Arbor now for 10 years, engineering department. So I see what's going on. Also, usually when a developer comes in, we make sure that they're going to be paying for things the subdivision is going to affect. If traffic light needs to go up down here, then somebody should be putting the traffic light up. The taxpayer shouldn't be paying that after the fact. But I would just like to see less homes. I know what this looks like. I already told you, go out on Pontiac Trail, North Sky subdivision. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Can you repeat your name? The recorder didn't get it.
Doug Egley, E-G-L-E-R.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. All right, next up. Yes, sir.
My name's Bill Kurtz. I'm kind of excited to hear that we like the point.
I knew you would.
But you guys might know me. I'm still in the area and I'm certainly passionate about the property. Mr. Minnick here, I mirror his thoughts that I own several properties and yeah, I respect the right of the property. It is challenging. So I just came to listen. I'm still certainly looking in the area, looking to, I serve the community, and interested in the community, taking care of people. So I'm here tonight just to listen, but I thought I'd pass that on. That sometimes I do get a lot of input into my business, and it is frustrating. Mr. Khan had spoke, but no one seems to have interest in buying the property. And said that you tried, so you might hook up with Mr. Khan. You know, here's the, I'll make you two know. So that's all. I'm just there. You know, you guys got tough jobs. So
Thanks,
appreciate what you
Bill.
do.
Appreciate it.
Okay, oh, yeah. I'm Dan Russell. I live over on Ridge Road, couple things. So, I'll go over here, so I don't have my back. About 25 years ago, I was the benefactor of someone who wanted to put in a PUD on about 25 acres out by Kavanaugh Lake. The township, with its old master plan, says you can't do that. So I was able to buy 10 acres of that 25. A neighbor bought 6 or 7 acres of that 25, and then another 6 or 7 acres is still it's houseless right now. So 25 years later, that 25 acres on Ridge Road up Kavanaugh Lake there's been one house and one barn added to it, right? So there's life after something like this gets turned down for the property. And just because someone owns 50 acres or 100 acres, the township doesn't owe them the right to chop it up into half-acre lots, right? When people buy property, when I bought my property, it was 10 acres was minimum. And then I blinked, now it's 5 acres, and I blink again and it's 2 acres. Right? So if we don't get a hold of this thing as a township, we're gonna be like Dexter or Canton, right? And so I guess I just want to say that we don't, because someone's gonna say, you can't tell the property owner what they can do with their property. And the township can to a certain extent, because they bought that property knowing when they bought that property, it was probably 10-acre lots. So if you invested in that hoping it was gonna be 1-acre lots someday, well, that someday might not come, right? So if it's 5 acres and it's 10 acres, and if there's no private roads, those are the rules, and that's the hand we're dealt, and that's how we have to continue forward. The master plan shoots this thing down 5 different ways, right? So you know, even us spending time considering this seems a waste. So that's all I got. Yes, in the back.
And Beth Palma, and I live at the end of Pierce, the club. And my concern, regardless of what goes in, because I didn't include it, the tow truck or this development, but is traffic. I'm not sure if everybody realizes how, I know it's been mentioned, but I'm not sure how many realize how heavy that small intersection can get. When there's an accident or something stopped on 94, I can't move my driveway. Lined up on Pierce Road for people who get off thinking that they can put back on. I have in the past gone out and given directions. I think that's something I'd really like to just bring to the board. If anything goes in.
Thank you. Others, before we get back to the, first up front, and then we'll get back to you.
My name's Sandy Edward. I live on Garvey Road. And I want to echo what you said. At least once a week on my way to work, I'm almost hit head on by people coming west and whipping down Pierce Road. Now you want to add 150 more cars. And from what I can see on the proposed site plan, it's partway down that hill. So coming out of that driveway for
for those 150 cars, they're not gonna be able to see. Those of us coming at them are not gonna be able to see until it's too late. And I can't even imagine why the township would allow such a huge development out in the middle of the sticks. Yes, I understand there's water and sewer. I've worked at Scioto Township for over 30 years. I have watched Jackson Road. In fact, I've been very involved with the creation of the boulevard. I understand all of the pressures, all of the finances involved. And I can tell you this, Scioto Township, in my 30-year tenure, we built up a huge fund balance that is now being chipped away and chipped away and chipped away because now there's so much density. We can't afford the police. We can't afford the fire. And it's gotten out of control because it's gotten too big. We have no police. We have a tiny little fire department that serves a very large area. And to put that high of density in there, the houses are gonna be 10 feet apart, really? I mean, that's closer than we are. And we all recognize, yes, he's a property owner. He has the right to do something with his property if he doesn't want to farm it anymore. Not a problem. But you gotta get the right development. And houses that close with the entrance that I can't even believe Washington County would let them put that in there, to tell you the truth, with that driveway on that damn hill. I think the township at large needs to do something with that intersection, putting up a traffic light or something. You can't put 150 more homes in there. People travel down Pierce Road. Or, yeah, 170 homes, 150 cars. They travel down that road over 55 miles an hour without blinking. Are we out to kill people? Because that's what it kind of feels like. And, you know, I get builders want to make money. The way you make money is you stack them in. But what's it going to look like when there's no services? And it's going to increase the taxes for all of us because of it. And I just urge you to really think through this before you hit the entire township. At the beautiful opening on I-94, and we want to turn it into looking like a Canton or some of these higher developments. Really, that's what we want? I don't think so. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Renee Towns. I had a last person drive. Monopolized a little bit, but I just wanted to remind the commission that back in 2019, there was a proposal, I think, from one increased density on some property. It was having already been and among other reasons, one reason that was turned down was an unacceptable impact on surrounding properties, especially with regard to traffic and maintaining the rural characteristics. So I think we're looking at the same thing here. I don't think anything has changed since then. So I wanted to remind you of that. And then I wanted to speak to the master plan situation. It sounded a little bit like you were saying you guys maybe weren't sure if things had changed enough that we have to do a full-blown review, but based on the fact that we just had way too many news talking about a potential tow yard, and now we're back here talking about another inappropriate development that, you know, wants that same spot. So many people are here, clearly enough has changed. You know, now we're getting all these requests for these kind of land developments. It needs to be a full review with everybody's input so that we're all on the same page. And get the master plan to where everybody is happy with it, and then we'll be entertaining requests that make sense for the area.
All right, I'm gonna get the applicant the last 2 minutes, and then we have to get to our part of deliberation.
Let's stop.
All right.
Charlie Town, Charlie Bishop Commercial, I've had the property since. And, I had people, Mr. Combo. Had a person that wanted to farm it for an apple orchard. And the soils were too crappy. Somebody who was looking at it for the solar panels, they didn't make an application, but they came here before you to talk about it, didn't have the zoning. And somebody else wanted to do apartments there, Mr. Combo didn't like that. We had this current application, which I came before the planning commission a year prior and asked to consider it. I said if it was deemed appropriately, it's something that would be a possibility. We went through that process. Not about opposition. We planned the master plan. You were all on the master plan, substantive, when it was done. And, it's planned for mixed use, something that fits that mixed use. There's a lot of other uses which everybody here in this room, except a few of us, would deem inappropriate as well. So it doesn't matter what somebody brings in front of us, nobody's gonna like it. I'll take a backup offer, but right now it's in his hands, and Mr. Combo wants to sell it to him. And there might not be an opportunity for Mr. Combo to want to sell it to somebody else. And, I just hope that you would stick with what you guys started out with as a master plan and follow what you did. As far as costs for development, and maybe somebody can do it more economically or lower things. When I started in this business, it was about $20,000 for all the infrastructure for a lot. That is now up to close to $80,000. So the economics aren't there to put in infrastructure for large estate lots. And the cost for building the materials has increased insignificantly higher. There is a shortage in this country of a deficit to meet the population demands of over 4 million homes. Last week, I checked the MLS stats for available homes just in the city of Chelsea School District, and I think there's 5 or 6 homes available. So it's definitely, there's a need for more housing. There's a need for attainable housing that people can afford to own in this community. And from what I understand, there was a millage that was passed to help pay for the infrastructure on the sewer and water. There was infrastructure to help pay for, or a millage to help pay for consent judgments. So there's significantly infrastructure that's there that does need to be maintained, and there does need to be taps for that.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close down the public hearing so we need to work on the deliberation, which will be back and forth with all questions. We have our attorney Robert Thal on, we have our staff person on, but so the public hearing is closed, but I will, I do want to respond to, because we take copious notes. Our job here again is to take your input. So again, we're taking copious notes because all that goes up to the board when they make their final decision. I do want to respond to, I kept hearing this, why did we work so hard to bring this? Again, the developer worked hard, right? The township, I can't speak for the board, and you can ask that question when you go to them. But for this commission, we don't work hard to bring any of this forward. It comes our way and we have to deal with it, right? So that's what we're doing tonight. As far as the master plan, like I said, in late May, it'll be 5 years. We'll have a meeting, we'll determine what our review needs to be. I do want to point out, and I'm glad Dan said it, right? The master plan did do its job a few times, right? Like the reason the tow yard isn't here, the master plan said no outdoor storage. And the reason the Finney property apparently was mainly, I think, denied was, again, the master plan, it says it 1,000 times, preserve open space. And that's why we've hired a consultant to do that. What I don't agree with is that that's all you can put in the master plan, right? You have to be able to have these different varying districts. And, you know, right or wrong, this was an area that was determined to say to people, we would entertain a myriad of options. We didn't know what we'd get, right? Nowhere in that we think of tow yard, because I never even thought of it, but we got, you know. So people apply all the time, and then we use the balance of the master plan to say yes or no. It's not just what zoning districts are allowed. We also look at that other language that you all have eloquently pointed out, such as open space preservation and things like that. You know, going back to the Finney debate, it was controversial. I probably was the only lone vote a different way. I think it got misinterpreted by people. I'm more on the side of where Patrick is. I really love open space development options. And I think, you know, that was not a conditional rezoning. That was just a rezoning that this body is limited by law. I can't look at what they're going to build. I can only look at the standard of the zoning district. And that was a decision whether these should be 1 acre or 2 acre lots. And the fear was, well, then when the site plan comes up and you've got 1 acre lots, you're going to have 80 homes, right? Mr. Finney told us that he wanted 8 homes, and I was okay with that as long as it was 8. And I preferred 1 acre because then the rest of that beautiful wetland and that beautiful hill would have been preserved. So that was the reason for that vote. Otherwise, the rest of the planning commission looked at the master plan and said, no way. Okay. And I don't think any of us were in any big disagreement. So the master plan has done its job several times. The reason we don't start reviewing it a year and a half early is because it's only been here 3.5 years, right? And so there are legal things that we'll have to look at when we do our review, such as major changes. Again, it was easy last time. There was no bypass going in. There was consent judgments. In the last, you know, almost 5 years now, we haven't had those things. But again, we can't use a standard of, well, look at all the crazy proposals, right? Because we get those every day. I mean, it could say, low density residential and ag only, and we would still get proposals. Someone would come in and say, well, can you amend the master plan because I want to build this? And we'd have a hearing, and people would come out and they would get angry. So, but the process works. Trust in it, and we'll work through this. So, you know, one of the things that this is the process I want to use, planning commission members. So we have our staff report, we have an engineering review, we have fire authority, which we do have to review all those things. I think someone brought up, how do we know there's going to be enough fire, and how we know that's all part of it. Most of that is part of the site plan review, which I don't really want to get into, but I will just recognize that we have those reports. As I look through those, Sue Dickinson's report, all of her comments were to the site plan itself, not to the rezoning, as far as I can tell.
Yep.
Am I wrong in that?
No, you're correct.
Okay. The fire department, same thing. They were okay, but they want to see certain changes in the road because they need to be able to get in again, site plan, we do that stuff. There was another report that I forget. Anyway, they were all in the site plan, which if we get to that point, we will go through in detail with another one of these hearings or meetings and all that. So I want to skip ahead and go to the planning commission staff report that Carol does, because there was some items in there I want to point out our questions on. As we're doing that, I encourage all of you to also ask your questions if you might have highlighted that. And then we will move on to our standards of review that were based on things we've learned every time a zoning request has come up based on case law. We have to look at this, and this. And that's when we'll have a back and forth even more. We'll ask you things like, why does this do that? Right? Okay, so we'll start with the staff report. The applicant proposal, we went through that. Carol points out that the master plan does have this area as mixed use, which has everything from residential to commercial to multifamily to, I mean, just about everything. That's what mixed use is, right? The reason being, when the master plan was created, we look at things like infrastructure and, again, public hearings. You know, we didn't have a lot of people come out and say that that's not what we think. So we did the best we could. As we look through, let's see, I'm on page, I don't have any notes yet. So if I skip ahead of one of your notes, just yell. I'm on page 4, nothing yet. Page 5, The major question here is, I think on page 5, and that is this multifamily residential district. And the fact that it's composed of areas in the township, so the principal use is or ought to be multifamily dwellings. That's a question we need to ask ourselves. And the regulation of the district is designed to permit a density that with the intensity of land use in the area that's served by a central water and sewer system. So that is the reason why you get to this point. But I think there's another sentence there, which someone else pointed out, which I circled on mine, and is a major part of what I'm trying to wrestle with, which is, does this abut or is it adjacent to other uses, buildings, structures, amenities which support or complement or serve such a density or intensity? That's very hard to find in our township, so that's why we always question it, except for the old Westchester court judgment property, which is interesting. But anyway, permitted uses, and that goes to permitted uses. So right there, planning commission members, that's one of those issues I'm wrestling with, which is the adjacent and abutment. And then we get into the width issues. So SR1, the lot areas, someone did a great job, I think it was the attorney, of actually giving me percentages. So your conditions have sometimes 50% change in what would be normally in that zoning district. Is that all to create the density you need while preserving the wetland, or is it just because in your other developments you had another reason why? I'm talking about front yard setbacks, side yard setbacks.
So that's a multi-part answer. The first question, actually, when I was gonna come back up and talk, one of the question that I had that the attorney had referenced on the setbacks, are those the multi-family setback dimensions that he's referencing?
I was writing so fast, I didn't know that either. But I do know when I did my analysis, it wasn't quite that high, but there was one where it was almost half. I don't know what setback it was.
Well, because I mean, in multifamily and single family, you're gonna
Yeah.
be completely different.
Right.
So the reason the setbacks are what they are is because of the other community that we did. So for instance, if you were to go into the neighborhood part of downtown Chelsea, the homes are a little closer to the road. The porches are big front porches. It feels like a neighborhood. That's the look that we were looking. And when doing that, so we did the exact same product in Saline, but we just did straight zoning, 60-foot lots, normal, 40 feet off the road when you add the right of way. The exact same homes we did in Cherry Hill Village, and the neighborhood was completely different. The exact same homes, but the feel isn't there that we had in the other development. So those were the setbacks that we put in there, the lot sizes that we put in there were to mirror what we did there in. So I have the two different lot sizes for two different reasons. The 45-foot lots would be looking at like a 12, maybe a 13 to 1,800 square foot home. And the larger lots, the 55s, would end up being a step up from there. So maybe 19 to 2,400. So it's kind of a larger, or I should say a move up, even though you're not going to get somebody to buy one and then move it to the other one. But that's kind of what the thought process was in the village. And the village had even a third side, but we didn't have enough there to do that. The mention of the multifamily, because I know one of the letters I read, I think it might have been the attorney's, mention about the uneasiness of that being a condition in there. I mentioned in there about market conditions, but I really, at this point, because I know the site plan isn't the site plan, I mean, this is conceptually what we're looking at, but I am considering not adding density, but converting those 45s to duplex ranch condo units, because the demand for those are so big, and then keeping the 55s down at where they are. But I wasn't going to change the numbers. I was just going to combine lots and make it a 2-unit building instead of 2 individual. So that's why I put that in. Now, if it comes to the point when we go to site plan and you say, you got to make a decision on what you're going to do, then the site plan will be what it is. But in this process, I just wanted to make it clear that this is what we're looking at doing. The easterly half of the wetland piece might switch to duplex units. So that was why I put it in there without touching the density of the space.
All right, yeah, that makes sense to me in terms of your reason.
I do have one more if I can.
Yeah,
Because you mentioned it before you came to. about the one thing in your master deed about it not abutting another parcel. And then you touched on it saying it's pretty hard to find that. There has to be a starting point somewhere. I mean, you, as a commission, you guys decided that the mixed use was good for this area for a reason, and I'm assuming it's because of the sewer and water. I mean, you can go anywhere down that whole strip of Pierce Road. There's never a starting, I mean, there's never something to do that. So your sewer and water starts your precedence, and then once one goes in, then it will be able to meet all of the criteria. You don't have a piece of property in this township that meets that criteria. That it's, well, I take that back, down on Brown Road there is, but outside of that, you don't, and that's okay. That's what your master plan is set up as, is primarily rural. This is the area that you guys as a commission, by consultation or however you guys came to that conclusion, that this makes sense to have this on this strip.
Okay. Thank you. Another quick question. This is more site plan, and so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but the road size. So you had, was it 55 width on the right of way?
I believe so. Yeah, I think normally
it's normally 60.
Normally it's 60.
66.
Oh, is it 66? Okay, normally most communities, not everyone, obviously, it's usually 60.
Yeah.
That's a Washtenaw County. 66 is a Washtenaw County.
Yeah.
So again, it goes back to that,
Okay.
the look of the village.
All right. On page 9, anything else from other members on that issue that you want to ask about? Nope. Anything else on that you want to ask about? Okay. Page 9, Carol gets into the timing, and I do want to respond to this because there was some question about, well, why do you just do the master plan review and then do it? So when an applicant applies, we have 125 days between the time they file the petition to send our comments and decision to the township board. I think you all filed end of December, early January, right? We're
So somewhere.
2.5, 3 months into a 4-month window. So that does push us too. That's also why sometimes we have to take up another application. Like this entire year has been time-based applications up until this meeting. In fact, that's why we tried to squeeze in an extra meeting in
Yeah.
March, right?
Right.
It wasn't that way when Leah made me get on this commission. She said that would be like 3 times. You lied. Anyway, so that's the reason we have to consider this now. And the other, let's see. I think that's it I had from her report. I think everything else I have is from the new standards. Anything from her report that other members want to look at before we get into our review? I'll give you a second. You know, one area of the master plan, there's a rewrite of the master plan in her report, she reprints it. Maintain well-defined boundaries between developed areas by preserving buffers of open space, natural features for low density development between them. That gets right back to your point. Right? There's nothing to start from, but I think in your proposal, you talked about the fact that you had the railroad track on one side and something else. I think that was a response to that, right? What's your buffer? Onto the railroad track and then
The hill of the railroad.
and the wetlands, right? To the west too, right? Okay. Mike,
On the railroads, what's their easement right away? Is there any special restrictions?
Well, we're not encroaching on that. That's outside, yeah, that's outside of our.
how big is that? It's probably like a utility, right?
Well, actually, there is an easement to get to Mr. Minnick's and Mr. Warner's property, so they don't even encroach into the railroad property. So you have that easement
That
as well.
easement comes before the railroad.
Right, correct.
Because this is another site plan issue, but the engineer got into the fire department actually wants another access. And
Yeah, I talked to Chris about that. He's agreed to give us an easement for an emergency entrance.
All right, like I said, that's a site plan issue, but, okay. And then Carol did a great job in her project analysis. She gets into what the master plan says and new zoning designations in the water sewer. That is a standard. The fact that this zoning request fits with the zonings listed. And then soil, we do soil evaluations because we have to look at things like, does this leave this property with no other use? And so unfortunately, this property does have poor farm soil. And that's been, I think, part of the reason some of it's been up for sale for so long, right? As a guy who loves farm property, I know, right? So then we do have those soil things done, and then the SR1 is a fourth of an acre.
Yes.
True, right?
Yes.
And that you keep that in yours, but you're just changing the lot. Minimums, right? Is that it? They're still quarter acre, or they're not? Quarter acre.
No,
But they're less.
They're less.
Yeah, all right. Okay. All right. Being beyond that, let's get into the meat of what we have to look at as we evaluate this. So number one is, let's see here. One thing I did want to note, and I don't know if the attorney wants to, one thing that's come up is the time frame between if you were to approve a conditional rezoning and then actually having you go out and get started and get a site plan done. More than likely, we would want to keep that wider. We would put some timing, right? So if it's 2 years and 3 years, we would say, and I checked the attorney, and I think that's possible, that you can have a date by which the full site plan and final approval would be done. We've done that in the past. And that's just to save the township from opening up a condition and then having it go into perpetuity, right? So I didn't want to mention that to the planning commission members in case you have that question. Now we'll just start through some of our things we have to consider. So all the uses in the proposed district. In a normal rezoning, like I've said before, you have to just look at all the uses they could do, but this is conditional. So we have to look at the applicant, Danny's letter, and the use that he has planned, and then the conditions that he puts on 1 through 9. So that's really what we have to do when we look at this. And we have to say, not just is this zoning right, but these 9 things, are we comfortable with those 9 things? Understood? Got it? Any questions? All right. The other thing we need to look at is the compliance with master plan. Do we have any questions, thoughts, concerns around its compliance with the master plan? So I have 2 things I'll talk about because it's related to the first standard. Again, my issue is the master plan says, yeah, these are all great zoning districts, but it also says, please preserve open space as much as possible, rural character, so forth. So I have to look at your 9 conditions, and does it do that? And I have serious concerns because of the lot widths and depths and the density that that creates. And so yes, the zoning district fits. Does the density you're proposing fit? You know, that's what I wrestle with. And that gets into consistency with the zoning in the general area, which is another standard that we look at. I have a big question mark here because again, what we just discussed, there is nothing to compare to other than rural ag around it. The fourth one that we look at is compatibility with general land use patterns in the area. Again, that has to do with that same question. And then suitability of proposed uses in the zoning district. That I think is fine because if we look at the zoning district itself, that this would change to, I think the use fits with that by the letter of the law. Adequacy of public service is another standard that came up a lot in conversations. Here's what I know. We have the review by the fire department. I can't speak to policing. That usually comes up. Mike actually is the one that usually asks about that. Mike, is that your concern this time? Or you okay, so the way this works is someone brought up taxes, you know, but I think the both sides of that argument are, well, you build more homes, you have more tax base, and we pay for that. But again, in this township, we have the guys downstairs. That's our police force, right? So But the other thing I look at for public service is water, sewer, infrastructure, schools, so forth. And I think in this situation, that actually, I don't see anything wrong in that part of that standard. Anybody else? Okay, so the first three standards questions, these fit. Can we go on? Help me out here. Yes. All right, traffic. Traffic was brought up quite a bit, and that is something the courts have used in the past on zoning requests. There is nothing good about that intersection. This road, it's come up every time anyone's ever wanted to do anything in that area. It even comes up when we do businesses along Oak 12. It is a horrible intersection. It needs to be fixed. I don't know who can do that, the county usually, but that is something that I think in our report, no matter which way we vote, I would say the township board, that's a major concern of planning commission. Not only for this application, but for anything, that intersection is a major concern. So I'm gonna write that down. Okay. Reasonable use under current zoning classification. So ag, does this render the property entirely without value? That's a debate. I don't even want to get into. It has value as an ag piece of property, and then someone else brought up we can put 2-acre lots. So I think there is value in the property. Is it economical enough for the landowner? I don't know, but there is value. So I don't think you can say it has no value if you don't change it to MR or SR1. Is there identifiable public need? I don't really see that applying in this case because, again, this isn't about putting in low-income housing or something like that. This is about supply and demand for real estate. Reduce in value. Does it diminish the value of the property as long as rezoning does not result? So I don't think this is an area where it has direct applicability to this, but I'm open to debate on that part. It could be the surrounding residents. The surrounding residents, right? But I think the standard has to do with value inside the property. But I'm not sure. Citizen opposition. Yes, we have some. So that is often part of what we try to think about too, and a lot of it's always neighbors to come and go. But the major ones are the ones I pointed out, which I struggle with, and I think that's the ones we have to discuss the most, which is given the conditions that Mr. Berry wants on this rezoning request and the density that's involved in those conditions, that's where I'm struggling with the most. So I'll open that up for conversation amongst you all. I agree. I struggle with the density. I struggle with traffic. And I struggle with the public service, particularly police. We're going to look at some of the Steve.
I guess I agree with you there. You know, it is awful small lots and dense population. As far as traffic, yeah, it's a bad intersection. Does something need to be done? Yeah, they're gonna need to do something whether this goes in or not. As she said, there's accidents there, almost accidents daily, many times. I drive through there all the time, but I don't think the traffic is a make or break for this issue. It's something that has to be dealt with, whether this or anything else goes in there. So traffic, I don't see it being a problem for this development, but the lot sizes bother me a little bit of how dense it is.
Yeah, I agree. The density, too many houses, small lots. And the traffic, that is bad there.
Okey-dokey. Sandy.
Well, I'm thinking that it could be that horrible intersection has not been addressed because there's not, I mean, it seems like there's enough traffic. And I live on Old 12, so I go by that all the time. And and deal with people coming off 94 pretending I'm invisible because, and they pull right out in front of you. But I think that by increasing the population on Pierce Road, that's going to drive a change in that intersection. And 94 is terrible, regardless of whether you're coming from the east or the west. Both of those exits are very dangerous. But currently, there's not enough of enough population to get, and it's a federal highway. 94 is a federal highway. There's not enough action going on there to warrant their attention to change that intersection. So yes, it's horrible, but there's not enough reason for anybody to be motivated to fix it. So I think it is fixable, and we'd all be happier if all of those intersections are taken care of because they're dangerous.
Yep. Okay, so what, and I want to give the applicant another, so my major concern is the conditions, is these lot sizes and depths and what it does to create, what is inconsistent with what's around it to an extreme extent. So I'm just wondering, what's your thought process on that? Is this just something where it's like, this is what I need, this is where the demand is, and to do something like this in this area, this is what it takes?
Well, I first want to address it. If you look at the lot specifically, yeah, it's a dense lot, but you have to look at the entire project. There's almost a third of that project is not being touched. It's remaining the way it is. So if you talk open space, that's a lot of open space in comparison to the entire size of the property. Yeah, 100% agree. If you look at a 45 or 55 foot lot, it is. But I mean, that is the look and the feel of the neighborhood, is the closeness, the proximity of the units. Yeah. And it's not for everybody. I mean, I know it's not for everybody. I do have another question. So the rezoning we're doing is a conditional rezoning to basically this specific plan. I've been doing this for 35 years. I have never, ever seen something so specific to one thing. You usually, and you touched on it earlier, you come in and you rezone a piece of property. You as the board or commission have to look at what the rezoning will allow, not what a petitioner is bringing in, but what the rezoning will allow, and the site plan will be what will be determined at a later date. And I'm not saying I'm looking at doing anything different, but I just find this is an odd way of doing this versus your future land use says mixed use. That's all I wanted to come in for, was that, because I don't know how quickly we'll be able to get on this, if it's a year, if it's 2 years. I simply wanted to do that and get into a site plan at a later time. So that then goes to your timing of the 120 days that you were talking about earlier. Then the last thing, and you already answered it right there, saying a minute ago, but has the community, not just residents, but the board and the commission, reached out to the county and the state about that intersection, about traffic lights or whatever? Usually it is density, or I should say population, that will drive a change like that. We had a situation like that in Pittsfield Township, that our development kicked it over and we had to contribute towards a street light at an intersection that was already developed. We just happened to be the last person on the block, and they made us contribute towards it. But so, I mean, there is those scenarios that can come out to help that intersection. I'm not saying that I'd pay for a street light entirely myself, but I'd be fine in contributing towards it, because our traffic obviously is going to add to it.
What normally happens is we get into a development agreement situation with the board where those things are addressed, because anything that's developed in this area is going to have to deal with it.
100%.
And to answer your question, I don't know who's the last that reached out on it. It's come up many times. I know previous boards have talked to the county about that area, but I wasn't around for that, so I don't know. That's why I said in any recommendation either way that we send up to the board, I will reiterate that, again, that intersection needs to be dealt with because of these requests, and how they do that with the county, luckily is above and beyond what I'm here for, which is good. The other question, about look and feel, that is what I'm struggling with. As far as conditional rezoning, the reason I think sometimes that, well, I'll use the previous, one I used before, the Finney example, that was not conditional. So the fear was 1 acre lots would lead to 100 homes, because he had 100 and some buildable acres, not on the plot he was applying for, but on the whole enchilada.
Yeah.
Big. So then you have this fear out there, like, oh, what's that? So conditional is, well, I'm gonna come in and allay your fears and say, no, I'm gonna do 8 homes just here, I promise, it's in writing. In this situation, because the MR is so broad, then it does, like, I think when the tow yard came in, it was like, okay, well, we should do this conditionally, right? Because this is all I want, I'm not gonna touch these other pieces. So I think conditional is favorable most of the time. I think it does come down to the conditions, and that's ultimately, unfortunately what we have to do. And we can't really get into a negotiation setting. It's basically you would propose the conditions and we'd have to look at those and say yay or nay. But that's just my reading of where we're at. Other questions, comments from members? So the next thing we get into is timing. Obviously, we have 3 options. One is we say, hey, we're not ready to make a decision. We put it off 1 month, and that happens sometimes. Or our other option is we feel like we need to recommend positive or recommend negative, and here's the reasons. Those are the 3 options we're at. So first option being, do we have enough information right here to make a decision this evening? That's my first question. You don't think so? Just on the zoning, not on the site plan? Both. Okay. Anybody else think one way or the other?
So we're looking at just the conditional rezoning from agricultural to multifamily residential zone.
With these 9 conditions, if you have Mr. Berry's letter, the 9 conditions are on page 2.
Okay.
Based on how many things did I go through? 10?
Yeah.
So based on that, do we have enough to be able to make that determination? Right.
Because we're not supposed to look at what the owner is going to do. Because we don't know that. He just happened to submit a site.
If I could say something.
Yeah, no, Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, so no, in a general rezoning request, that's right. You just look at what is permitted in the zoning district, and you can't really consider what the owner is proposing, because it could be anything. Once you rezone it, it can be anything in that zoning district. What you have before you today, though, is a conditional rezoning. So that is different because it is specific to what those conditions are placed by the owner on the property. So the intent is to kind of waylay fears of what might go on there from any use in that zone to, okay, this is the proposed use, not necessarily a site plan, but what conditions, how are they going to develop it? What are going to be the size of the lots on there? The conditions could have said, we're going to do half-acre lots, or could have said, we're going to do 1 acre lots. It could be whatever, but it's whatever specific conditions they put on there. So when you're looking at it, it's not the site plan, it's the rezone, but the rezone is to a specific, those specific standards that they put forward. And those are binding on the owner, and it has to be done in that way.
Right, so that's why I keep going back to those 9 conditions.
Right, so you do have to look at those, and that's part of, if you kind of look at the standards, the first one is what's allowed in the district. Well, that's what would be how you would look at that standard. That is what they're saying would be allowed on the property. So everything that you look at after that, in terms of consistency with the zoning in the area, or compatibility with the general land use patterns, suitability of the property, all those things go directly to those conditions and how they propose to develop the property.
Right, and that's what I keep coming back to is with these 9, you know, and you ask yourself the question, so what is consistent in this type of zoning? This changes what's in this type of zoning. So that's my concern. So today or next month, that's my concern. And so at this point, that's where I'm at. I can make a decision. If you all want to wait and figure out your side, I mean, that's where we're at. So,
I'm sorry, I was reading.
I know
was
you're reading
reading
something
the
like
line.
passing notes in class.
Yeah. Could you say just the first part of what you just said?
So what Mr. Thal was saying was, you know, if your first standard is to look at what is allowed in the zoning district, and then what does the conditions allow? The conditions allow a much more dense, smaller lot than the zoning district, in other words. So the applicant has told me, well, that's a look and feel thing. Well, that's exactly what I'm looking at, is the look and feel, and would that make it even more incongruent with what's around there? And my answer is yes. That's where I'm at. All the other ones I could get by and around, but that is one that it's probably a problem. So in other words, I can do something today. If you all want to wait a month, we can do that too, but that's up to you. We did receive this packet just a week ago. There's a lot of information here, so I'm completely open. The chair will not tell you what to do here.
Can I get something?
Well, I want to make sure we have that discussion first. So is it something where you all want to wait, or do you think you have a feeling one way or the other?
I'm good with the rezoning, I think, to the multifamily in that, as long as further stipulations, you know, on the site plan would
So
be
what about,
changeable.
what about the 9 conditions he has there on the lot width? That would go with this zone. We couldn't change that.
The lot width he's giving or the lot width, okay. Yeah, I don't know what I'm ready to decide on that.
Okay.
Yeah, when you look at this application, you have to look at it with those 9 conditions. It's not gonna, those don't get to be changed with the site plan.
Yeah, that's the confusing part, because normally on a site plan review, we're looking.
Right.
But now it's conditioned on this reason,
that,
so
okay.
you have to consider those 9 things as going with this and can't be changed.
In that case, I think we should wait.
Well, wait, or are you ready to deny?
I think we just go ahead.
Leo, where you at?
Yeah, I just assume wait, there's a lot, I've looked through a lot of this.
Would it help if the board is considering waiting? Would you want a legal opinion? You know, I've listened to the full public hearing, and I could provide at your next meeting, you know, my legal opinion to you for your next meeting, if that might help. It's totally up to you.
Yes, what do you all think? My brain always works a little different, so I don't wanna.
I could make a motion to.
Well, let's have a discussion first. I wanna hear what Sandy's at. Would that
I
help
would prefer to have his legal advice.
down here?
I agree.
Okay, so take that into consideration, Mike. That they would prefer to have that from Mr. Thal. And then what do you want to do now?
We can make a motion to table the zoning builders conditional zoning request for tax ID.
You don't have to say the number.
But Meiji to multifamily residential pending further legal opinion.
Support.
Okay, so to reiterate that, on the mic, that was a motion to table the application for the rezoning request for tax ID number such and such, such and such. Pending a legal review by township attorney. To make sure I got all that. And that's been moved and seconded by Mike and Sandy. Any discussion on that motion?
Sounds like a wise move.
All right, we will do a roll call on that motion. Sandy,
Yes.
Mike, Leo,
Yes.
Steve. And the chair votes yes. We're good. Motion is adopted, so we will have the township review it, attorney review it based on that those standards review, what he's heard here tonight. That's where we're at. But that, you know, for the applicant, I mean, that's my real issue is this, minor holding problems, so.
Can I ask my question?
Now you can ask your question.
Okay, so I don't remember what the Wexford community.
Westchester.
So they have, I believe, based on 0.16 acre lots, those are 60 footers. I'm guessing, right in that 60-foot wide.
I don't know.
Some are 45.
Some are 40,
Okay,
45.
So they have that same thing, and looking at the zoning map, there's nothing that they do there. So
That was a consent judgment, the judge, we didn't even get to look at the site plan. So, unfortunately, you bring up the example that's burning in the back of my mind that I don't want to see.
and I was just,
I drive by that thing,
I didn't know about the consent judgment, so I hope you don't think that I brought that up.
No,
I
I
really
didn't.
didn't know that.
No.
I was just curious.
Consent
So
judgment.
then my next question, and I can answer it, but
Right.
trying to get a feel here. The lot size is your heartburn. Is the lot size going up to 60? I mean, that would probably reduce that front half. If I kept the 55s in the back and I raised the bigger ones in the 60,
Yeah.
probably go from 40 down to 30.
I can't get into all that because I don't really want to have a negotiation on it. I have to look at the 9 you provided me and then do that part of it, but I can tell you, in general, I'm concerned about the density and the number of homes in that area. And I realize it's 32 acres, but again, it's only 32 acres. So I'm trying to figure out how to, you know, balance those things. So other.
Yes, that's the nature of the township.
Wow, that just followed.
Other than what?
future land use.
All right, we'll move on because we have a very important item up for business that this committee can't leave until it's done.
I do want to mention in communication, I have something I want to,
You have something in communication? All right,
you want me to mention it now?
hang on one second.
Okay. I meant to hand it out to you, and I'm sorry I didn't, but it kind of goes and it dovetails a little bit on this. We received an email from Washtenaw County Road Commission. The traffic impact study for Westchester Farms for 457 homes has moderate impact on, we were blown away. 457 homes. I'll send that email to you. It's like, I was just blown away. 457 homes has moderate impact on traffic over on Kavanaugh Lake Road. It has 3 traffic points. So take that into perspective as well. So, you know, I was just, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, like I said, the traffic issue is one that I get it. It's very hard, given our standards, what we're supposed to be doing around that, because it's just not.
But traffic impact study is part of
That's
that
part of the
site
site
plan
plan
of doing
review.
a PUD.
Yeah.
So
You got to
there's
that.
so many things that are part of
Right.
that
If you got-
later segment.
If you got to the site plan review of the PUD, you do a traffic.
Yep.
All right, well, I appreciate everyone coming out and we will get to our communication. You can stick around. We've got one item of business left, and that's we're gonna have an arm wrestling match to see who's secretary. And I get to leave because it won't be me.
So, at one point in time, the township board agreed that we would pay to have somebody do the township board notes. And I don't think we did that, but we certainly considered it. And I think with the information that the township supervisor sent out today regarding how to take minutes, that we should, I guess, go to a board and ask them if they would pay us to have somebody do that. We cannot find somebody in the room. And I can't hear well enough. You're talking right next to me. I can't hear you.
Right. So the other thing I want to point out, and I completely agree, I don't know about what they paid for, we haven't taken notes, but the standard that Dawn set was a little above and beyond what I've always done my minutes as. Like I serve on a couple of boards, and we don't do anything near what Dawn did now, and I'm fine with what she did, but the first job of a secretary is you have to sign a piece of paper every week. Because I sign one line and then you sign the other. That's basically saying what the minutes can be approved. It's called executing the documents. And then when someone gets the site plan approved, you have to sit here and sign every 8 copies of that site plan. That's not a bad thing, right? You can come in anytime you want to do that. I did it one time in my entire career as secretary. And then the final thing is minutes. And yes, we can do minutes by community committee. We can take the Zoom meetings. I mean, you know, that's that. I don't know what to say. Yeah, but I don't know what to do about this other than our bylaws require us to have the secretary. I suppose we can get away to the beginning of the next meeting. Because we're already.
Well, I'll ask and see what we can find. What we can find out, what I can find out about being able to actually hire somebody. For me.
Well, I know fast. Clerk took the notes. The secretary basically gets those notes. And says, yeah, these are all the things I remember. You know what I mean? And then, and that could be the case for the note taker, I don't know. But you're essentially responsible for signing your name.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. There was a time during the transition.
Well, said something about he asked somebody, and he said he could use. It sounded like he said he had talked to Mr. Minnick about using that driveway. No, I understand Mr. Minnick owns the land, but our agreement is that it's for his use and my use only. So
I can't speak.
But you had a secretary that signed it.
who should I ask this question to? Because I guess.
I mean,
I
it's
didn't
like
wanna
it's a
bring it
legal
up
document.
in front of everybody and start.
So
a big
whoever
hubbub.
ever accepts that role has to realize that it is, you know, it's a legal document.
No, it's Scott's not here.
He owns the land and I have a right of way. But our agreement for that, because I gave him the land.
I don't know.
So when I
Our
was secretary,
is.
he tried to come in and
in
say
the
that
agreement of
you wanted to put that electronic blinking billboard.
strictly for the
And
two of
said,
us.
well,
Yeah, I don't
oh,
know.
we don't have to do that because,
called him.
you know,
Oh, don't, you can
Said,
talk to him.
I want to
We
make
don't
a
need to
change
get
in the
into
master
this
plan.
now.
That's
He's-
what
you
we
want to
want to
get
put into the
into
master plan.
Yes, he's a-
And when we got to the why, it's because we want to put that blinking billboard.
You don't have to, yeah, I don't know.
Well, you didn't want that in notes because under state law, you can't change.
Well, I just wanted to
the
let
zoning
you guys
designation,
know
put up a billboard.
that's something that the fire department does.
Well, I put it in the notes. People would have been pissed if we didn't.
Right.
You know, I mean, sometimes.
You
it
go
doesn't
look
matter.
for something, just so that matter.
That's why he tried to kick me off.
Pretty sure that's not the case.
Yeah, he had another person on his December movie. He had John. Plunger. He had him all lined up to take my seat. Really? And I didn't even know I was up. And I got a call from Don. No, maybe a meeting. to replace you. Oh, yeah. And I said, well, that's tricky, son of a gun. And so the other board member said, no.
I'll mention it. I mean, no, it's,
Oh, my God.
would have to be a site plan issue and that would come up. So it's like,
I didn't go with it.
whatever he says, we would have to have legal documents.
Well, I'm slick, so I just wanted someone to know that.
Sure.
I'm not agreeing to that.
Okay, it would be, that would all have to come up because we have to have legal documents that would have, anybody that had access to it would have to agree to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we do this?
But thank
Why don't
you.
Look into the recorder,
Sure.
also ask about the clerk. Clerk comes to every one of these.
Oh, it's not her responsibility.
No, I know it's not.
And she has her hands full.
No.
I'll help you with the notes because I got 15 pages, so,
Oh, my gosh.
and I know I
I mean,
lost
the notes by
track.
committee does work, like we all say, oh, let's put, you know.
We all do hear something
All right.
I have one other thing.
Mhm.
So this is the planning commission / ZBA training session in Battle Creek on March 31st or 27th, I don't know. But I'm going, and if anybody.
Actually, it's being put on by Mr. Thal's firm.
It's in
So-
April, right?
No.
No, it's the end of this month.
This is the plan, the PCZBA training session. Rob, are you still there? Do you want to speak to that at all? Is he there?
So the planning commission part is 1 to 4. That's the, I'm driving, that's the only part I'm going to, is I'm dog sitting. And I can't, so I can't.
Yeah, I'm
Oh, wait,
still
there it
here.
is. Okay, you want to speak to the training session put on by your firm?
Yeah, so we're putting on a training session on the 31st, I think it is. Which is gonna be for the planning commissions and for zoning board of appeals and zoning administrators. And we have a couple attorneys from my firm who are gonna be teaching it, one of which is a planner. She's also an attorney. And it's gonna be a day-long event. We're gonna provide, there'll be dinner. The first part of the day will be devoted to planning commission, and then after dinner will be zoning board of appeals. I think most of the people are gonna stay for, well, even if you're on a ZBA or PC, you probably stay for the whole time if you can. But yeah, we certainly would like to see you there.
So you don't have to pay for the registration, you have to contact them and let them know, and they're going to tell the town.
The 31st, I believe it is.
Yes, it's the 31st.
Yeah, I know, I checked into it. I picked it. My life was hard. All right, other issues?
So I have a strong feeling that we're not doing the zoning map then on the 28th of April.
Well, I
mean, we could
there
probably,
won't be another hearing. It'll just
Right.
be a deliberation
So-
of the city. And like I
So
said,
Rob-
you're gonna butt up against 120 days very quickly. dude.
Rob, what do you think? Can we do the zoning map ratification and this? Because it's basically the public hearing's going to be over with. You're going to give. the planning-
Right, yeah, no, I think we certainly could, you're just gonna have some more deliberation on this, take action, and then you could move on to the zoning map. I think you'd have plenty of time.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm not putting anything off anymore. The meeting. No, there's no public. Get public comment.
So you're waiting to adjourn is what he's asking, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, we can adjourn. Are you?
Second.
At 9:20?
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, who moved?
Mike, second by Sandy. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate your help, and
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to make sure we do this right. You all know
Yeah.
where this is headed. This Vinny is.
You know how much
I know we're still getting that county.
So the status of that, as I understand it, he's going to probably.
Come over here, I can't hear you.
I'll just bring a chair over. So the status of the property, as I understand it right now, is it's gone to the county parks, parks and recs has to approve it because there has to be funds to buy the property.
Right.
And
I don't know where that is, but since it's kind of, my understanding is no news is good news.
Yeah.
So since they're not saying no, apparently it's still going forward. You know, we haven't heard anything otherwise, you know, on that, but I honestly don't know. If it blows up, then it's going back.
But how are they gonna come up with enough money? The value of that property right now has never been.
No, and I'll tell you, I mean, Steve and Leah, you know, I mean, the value of that property is millions. You know, if you took the development value, there's a program called Transfer of Development Rights. If you all heard that, it's like where you take the value and it's like you transfer it somewhere else. Which it's that kind of reminds me of the carbon footprint crap. It's like, so you dirty this area, but then you absolve yourself over here. So that's what TDR is. And,
Hey,
so I don't-
Ron.
So I don't know where that's gonna be, but the value of that property is, it's way more than it was when he proposed it.
So Rod, the meeting is over.
Oh, is that part of me? Rod, do it. Can we close this out?
Maybe.
So I need to do that.
Apparently hasn't been by there to see how much money I put in the house.